the night arrives quietly. It doesn't rush in or demand attention. It simply unfolds one breath at a time, like a curtain of darkness slowly drawn across the horizon. Out here, far from the mainland, the sea moves in slow, patient waves. The lighthouse stands alone on the edge of a small island, a single tower of stone, surrounded by wind and salt and silence. And inside, the keeper listens. He listens to the faint hum of the lantern, above the ticking of a clock that doesn't hurry, and the steady rhythm of his own breath. Take a slow breath in and let it go. You are safe here. The sea is calm tonight. The world has grown quiet enough for you to rest. The keeper moves carefully up the spiral stairs, each step echoing softly against the walls. He doesn't need the light to find his way. He's walked this path every night for years. At the top of the tower, the lantern glows a soft circle of gold surrounded by glass and fog. It isn't bright. It doesn't need to be. It only needs to exist. To remind the world that someone is still awake. He places a hand against the warm metal. It hums gently beneath his fingers. Outside, the wind carries the scent of salt and rain. The keeper breathes in deeply. For a moment, he imagines that the ocean is breathing with him, in and out. The rhythm matches perfectly. He looks out through the window. The horizon is gone, swallowed by the dark. Only the beam of light moves now, turning slowly like the hand of an enormous clock. Every few seconds, the light touches the same point in the distance, the same invisible stretch of sea. It's as if the ocean is waiting for that moment, for that small, familiar flash that says, "You are not alone out there." Inside the tower, time softens. Minutes stop trying to behave like minutes. They become something else, something slower, something tender. The keeper sits down beside the window, his chair creaking softly beneath him. He closes his eyes, listens to the deep, slow heartbeat of the sea. He has learned that the ocean never truly sleeps. It just rests like a giant creature breathing in its dreams. He speaks to it sometimes quietly, as if it might understand. "You and I," he says, "we're not so different." The words drift into the air, caught by the wind, carried somewhere into the mist. He doesn't need a reply. The silence itself is enough. Take another breath in and let it fall softly out. Feel how your body begins to settle, how the day starts to fade from your shoulders. You don't have to do anything now. You don't have to hold anything. The world is already taking care of itself. The keeper opens his logbook. Its pages are filled with years of careful handwriting, small notes about tides, storms, and ships that passed unseen. But tonight he writes only one line: "The sea is quiet." Then he closes the book, lays the pen aside, and leans back. Some nights he dreams with his eyes open. He sees shapes in the fog, ghostly sails, stars, reflected in water memories that rise and fade like waves. He remembers a shoreline he hasn't seen in years, the sound of someone laughing, the warmth of a hand he once held. But the memories don't ache anymore. They arrive, rest for a moment, and drift away again. The keeper has learned that holding on too tightly is just another way of staying awake. And tonight, he wants to rest. Outside, the wind changes direction. The sea breathes deeper. The tower creaks softly, as if the island itself is settling into sleep. The keeper lowers the flame just slightly enough to soften the glow, but not enough to darken it completely. He watches as the light bends through the glass, scattering tiny rainbows onto the stone walls. The colors fade quickly, but he smiles anyway. He knows that even brief light can travel farther than anyone imagines. Sometimes it crosses oceans. Sometimes it reaches someone who didn't even know they needed it. Maybe that's what dreams are, he thinks, light that never found its way home. He takes one last look through the window. The sea is endless. The stars are patient. And somewhere far beyond what the eye can see, the first ship of the night turns toward the glow. He doesn't know who sails it. He doesn't need to. It's enough to know that the light will guide them. He breathes out slowly, his breath fogging the glass. The warmth fades in seconds, leaving only the reflection of his own face. A quiet face, a tired face, but peaceful. He whispers almost to himself, "The night has arrived." Then he closes his eyes. Outside, the sea keeps breathing, the light keeps turning, and the world keeps resting. You are part of that rhythm now. Your breath moves with the waves, your heartbeat with the lantern's glow. Nothing is waiting for you to fix it. Nothing needs your effort. Everything has already begun to rest. Take one last slow breath in, hold it gently, and let it fall away. The night has arrived for you too. You are safe. You are home. You are at rest. The sea remembers everything. Even the smallest sound, the echo of a whisper, the sigh of a boat drifting by, stays hidden somewhere beneath the surface. Tonight, the keeper stands on the stone steps outside the lighthouse. The air is cool, and the wind carries the scent of rain and salt. The sky is heavy with stars, their reflections scattered across the dark water. He listens. At first, it's only the usual song of the sea, the slow inhale and exhale of waves. But if he stays quiet long enough, the sound begins to change. It becomes layered alive, as if each wave carries a different story, a different voice. Take a slow, steady breath in and let it go. Listen. The water has something to tell you too. The keeper closes his eyes. The sound of the waves grows softer, closer. He imagines he can hear words inside them, not spoken but remembered. Long ago, when he first came to the island, he thought the sea was empty. Now he knows better. Nothing that touches the water is ever lost. He kneels down, touches the edge of the tide with his hand. The water is cold, but gentle, sliding between his fingers like silk. A small shell drifts toward him, carried by a soft wave. He lifts it, holds it against his palm. It's ordinary grey, smooth, unremarkable. But when he brings it close to his ear, he hears something faint. Not the roar of the ocean, something smaller, something like a voice. "Do you remember me?" The keeper doesn't answer. He knows the sea doesn't expect him to. It just needs someone to listen. He holds the shell close again. The voice continues, no louder than a breath. "You once sailed across me years ago. You watched the moon rise from my waters. You left your laughter in my waves." He remembers now a time before the lighthouse, before solitude and silence. He had been a sailor once, a wanderer chasing light across the horizon. The sea was his companion then, the only thing vast enough to match his dreams. But dreams fade, and when they did, he came here to this island to keep the light for others who were still searching. He exhales slowly. The wind moves around him like a sigh, in and out, the breath of the world itself. He walks closer to the waterline. The tide glows faintly under the moonlight, each wave tracing a silver line across the sand. He watches the waves roll in and out, over and over, as if the ocean were trying to write something, but the message keeps erasing itself. Still, he can almost read it. He can feel it. The sea is saying thank you. For the nights, he stayed awake. For the light, he kept burning. For the quiet company they have given each other. He sits down on a rock, lets the cold spray touch his face. The shell in his hand grows warmer, or maybe it's his memory warming it. He closes his eyes again. Now he is drifting. The border between wakefulness and dream begins to blur. He sees the sea from long ago, brighter, louder, alive with wind and sunlight. He sees his younger self aboard a small ship, laughing with the crew, eyes wide with wonder. Someone beside him, a woman, is leaning on the railing, her hair caught by the wind. He never knew if she was real or only a dream he told himself too many times to forget. She turns to him and smiles. "You said you'd come back," she whispers. He doesn't answer. He never did. The memory plays out slowly, like a film that's been left in the sun too long. Colors faded, edges blurred. He feels the warmth of the day, the smell of the sea, the sound of her voice. Then everything folds back into darkness. The ship disappears. Only the waves remain. Take another breath in, hold it gently, and let it go. You are floating now, not sinking, not swimming, just resting in the arms of the water. The sea remembers for you. You don't need to. The keeper opens his eyes again. He's still sitting on the shore, the shell still in his hand. The tide has risen a little higher, touching the edge of his boots. He looks out at the horizon, a dark line between ocean and sky. Somewhere far away, lightning flickers behind a cloud. No thunder follows, only silence and the endless sound of water moving. He breathes in, deeply lets the air fill his lungs, then releases it slowly. He realizes something then. The memory in the waves wasn't the sea's alone. It was his too. The sea isn't trying to remind him. It's helping him let go. He rises, walks back toward the tower. Each step leaves a faint mark on the wet sand, but he knows the tide will erase them soon. That's what the sea does best. It carries everything away, but never cruelly. It holds things gently, first long enough for them to soften, to lose their sharp edges. That's how memories fade too. Not with violence, but with kindness. Back inside the lighthouse is warm and dim. The keeper sets the shell on the windowsill. The light from the lantern falls softly over it, turning the grey surface into pale gold. He watches it for a while, feeling the quiet hum of the tower around him. He whispers to the sea outside, "Thank you for remembering what I forgot." Then after a pause, "And thank you for letting me forget again." The waves continue their rhythm, gentle, endless, patient. Each one carrying a small piece of the world, a breath, a sound, a heartbeat, then returning it softer than before. The keeper listens until his own breath matches that same rhythm, in and out, in and out. The sound of the waves becomes the sound of his pulse. The hum of the lantern becomes the whisper of his thoughts. And slowly, everything begins to dissolve: the walls, the light, even the air. There is only the sea now, and the quiet memory of being alive. The keeper leans back in his chair. His eyelids grow heavy. He lets the last traces of the day fall away. Outside, the waves keep remembering. Inside, he begins to dream. The sea is quiet, he murmurs, and so am I. And somewhere deep beneath the surface, the ocean whispers back, "Rest now. I'll remember for you." The lantern has a heartbeat. The keeper never noticed it before, not in all the years he's lived among wind and salt and flame. But tonight, as the air falls still and the waves grow patient at the base of the cliff, he hears it. It isn't loud. It isn't steady either. It flutters softly, like the breath of a sleeping creature, a rhythm born of light and oil and time. He stands in front of the great lens, watching the flame turn within its glass heart. It sways with the draught, golden and trembling. Each time it leans, the reflection moves across the room, a pulse of light sliding over stone. For a moment, he thinks it matches his own heartbeat. He presses a hand to his chest. Inside him another rhythm answers, older, quieter but alive. Two heartbeats, one of flesh, one of flame, and between them a silence that feels like prayer. He has always believed the lantern lives. How could it not? It breathes through its wick, feeds on air, and oil sings when the glass expands with heat. When the storms come, it shivers. When the night is calm, it hums like a contented child. He has kept it company for years, tending it, cleaning the soot from its glass, shielding it from wind and rain. In return, it has kept him company too. He sometimes wonders if that's the real work of a lighthouse keeper, not watching the sea, but keeping something alive. He moves closer. The light paints his hands in gold. Every line, every scar seems softer in its glow. He watches the reflection ripple across the curved glass, then vanish. Another pulse follows, and another. The lantern breathes. He breathes. He begins to imagine that every beam of light that leaves this tower carries a heartbeat of its own, tiny, invisible pulses reaching out across the ocean. Perhaps that's why sailors trust the light so deeply. It's not just brightness that guides them home. It's the rhythm behind it, the living sound of someone still awake. Outside, the fog is thick tonight. It presses against the windows, a heavy grey wall that swallows everything. The keeper wipes the glass with his sleeve. Beyond it there is nothing to see. No horizon, no sea, no stars. Only the slow turn of the lantern spinning its light into the mist. The beam vanishes within seconds like a voice lost in sleep. Still, he keeps it burning, because somewhere out there, someone might need it, even if no one ever says so. He sits down at his small wooden table. The clock ticks softly. The oil flame murmurs. He takes out his notebook, the same one that carries his notes of tides and storms, and begins to write. But tonight, he doesn't write numbers or weather or passing ships. He writes a sentence that feels more like a confession. Every light has a heart. He stops there. The ink glistens for a moment, then dries into silence. He leans back, closes his eyes, listens again for the heartbeat. It's there, steady now, stronger than before. It isn't just the sound of flame. It's something larger, something that fills the room, fills him. The whole tower seems to pulse with it, stone airman and light beating together as one. For the first time in a long while, he remembers the night he first lit this lantern. The storm had been merciless. The sea was a wild thing, black and endless and roaring. He'd been younger then, his hands shaking as he poured the oil, his mind echoing with fear. He thought the light would never hold. He thought the wind would tear it away, but the flame had survived. It had bent bowed, nearly broken, yet it stayed. That night he learned something no book could teach, that endurance isn't strength, it's devotion. The light doesn't fight the wind. It moves with it, breathes with it, waits for the calm that always follows. He opens his eyes. The lantern's glow reflects in them, twin sparks caught in a quiet face. He thinks of all the people this light has touched, the sailors, the wanderers, the dreamers at sea. They will never know his name. They don't need to. All that matters is that the light was there when the darkness grew too deep. And tonight, he feels the warmth of that truth, beat gently against his ribs. He stands again, walks slowly around the lantern, checking the gears, the glass, the oil. Each movement is ritual now, the same gestures repeated every night, yet never meaningless. He knows the flame will one day go out, all things do. But not tonight. Tonight, the light lives. He can feel it moving in him, a soft vibration that begins in his chest and spreads outward, filling his hands, his voice, his breath. He whispers to the flame, a habit he's never quite broken. Keep beating, my friend. The light flickers as if it understands. A gust of wind rattles the windows. The fog outside shifts and curls. For a brief moment, the horizon reappears, a thin silver line trembling above the waves. Far away, a small ship glimmers in the distance. Its lights blink faintly, then vanish again into grey. The keeper feels a quiet relief, a thread of connection across the dark. The ship will never know whose hands kept the flame alive tonight. But that doesn't matter. The act itself is enough. The keeping, the heartbeat. He stays there until the fog thickens once more, until the edges of the world dissolve again. The lantern continues to turn its reflection, sweeping gently across the room, a slow, golden rhythm against the quiet stone. He places his hand on the glass, feeling the faint warmth beneath his skin. It feels almost human. It feels alive. He closes his eyes and lets that warmth travel through him, up his arm, through his chest, settling behind his ribs. For a moment he can't tell where the lantern ends and he begins. It doesn't matter. Light is meant to be shared. That's what it was born for. That's what he was born for too. Outside, the sea is calm again. The waves roll softly toward the shore, their rhythm gentle and endless. Inside, the lantern beats, and within that heartbeat, the keeper finds his rest. The night stretches wide around the tower, and the world grows silent once more, except for that single living light that keeps the dark at bay. The sea dreams at night. The keeper has always known it, though he's never dared to say it aloud. Some truths feel fragile, like shells that crumble when held too tightly. But tonight, the ocean leaves no doubt. It moves differently, slower, deeper, as if the whole world beneath the surface has fallen into a long and patient sleep. He stands at the window of the lighthouse, the lantern's golden hum behind him, and watches the tide stretch and breathe. The water gleams like liquid glass, rippling with the faint reflection of stars. The world feels balanced, one heartbeat in the tower, another in the sea. He steps outside. The air is heavy with mist. The waves slide toward the rocks with the softness of sighs. He descends the path to the shore, his boots sinking into the damp sand. Every few steps, a thin ribbon of foam curls around his ankles, cold and alive. The sea seems to listen. It always does. He wonders, when the world falls silent, what does the sea dream of? Not ships or storms, he thinks. Not of men or maps or destinations. No, the sea must dream of simpler things. The touch of the moon, the taste of starlight, the memory of the sky before the first dawn. The waves whisper his name, or something that sounds like it. He knows it isn't real, but it feels real enough. He closes his eyes. The rhythm of the water fills his head, a pulse that replaces thought, steady and slow. It's strange how sound can carry silence, how motion can create stillness. He listens, and for a moment, he's sure the sea is breathing through him. He exhales, and the tide retreats. He inhales, and it returns. The boundary between man and ocean, fades like fog. He remembers an old saying from a sailor long ago: "The sea dreams in shapes of light." He never understood it until now. As he opens his eyes, he sees faint glimmers beneath the surface. Not reflections, but soft pulses, tiny lanterns drifting in the dark. Bioluminescent plankton, awake in the water's sleep. Every wave stirs them to life. He kneels, touches the sea with one hand. The lights scatter around his fingers like sparks in blue glass. It feels like touching the dream itself. He whispers into the water quietly, not expecting an answer. "If you can dream, what do you dream of me?" A small wave rises laps against his wrist. The lights shimmer once, then fade. He smiles. He knows that's all the answer he'll ever get. Still, he can't help imagining maybe somewhere deep below the sea keeps a memory of every face that has ever looked upon it. Maybe his face is there too, softly drawn in the tide, blurred by time but not forgotten. The moon slips through a gap in the clouds. Its reflection breaks into pieces on the surface, silver fragments drifting apart and together again. He sits on a smooth rock, watching the water breathe. There's a sound beneath the waves, a low, rhythmic hum, like the world itself turning in its sleep. He feels small, but not lost. He feels alone, but not lonely. That's what the sea teaches. Solitude doesn't have to be empty. It can be full of sound, of memory, of quiet meaning. He remembers the first time he saw the ocean calm like this. Years ago, before the lighthouse, before duty and distance. He was on a small boat with his father. They drifted for hours without wind, the water so still it mirrored the sky perfectly. His father said, "When the sea sleeps, the world remembers itself." He didn't understand then. But tonight, as he watches the moon sway on the surface, he finally does. In stillness, the world doesn't stop living. It just dreams of gentler ways to be alive. He picks up a stone and tosses it lightly into the sea. The ripples spread in widening circles, breaking the reflection of the moon, then smoothing it again. It reminds him of thought, how one small memory can disturb the mind's surface, and how time, patient and kind, smooths it back to peace. He wonders if the sea dreams of him, the way he dreams of it in brief flashes, half remembered, gone before the morning. The tide begins to rise. It creeps up the sand surrounding his boots, cool and insistent. He stays where he is, letting the water climb to his knees. It isn't dangerous tonight. It feels like an embrace. He looks out at the horizon. There's no edge between sea and sky anymore, only a deep, endless blue. For a moment, he thinks he sees the lantern's reflection far out in the water, turning like a heartbeat half the world away. He knows it's impossible, yet he smiles again. Perhaps the sea is dreaming of light tonight. Eventually, he rises. The cold air wraps around him. The waves retreat with a soft reluctance, as if the sea doesn't want to let him go. He turns back toward the lighthouse, its golden eyes shining faintly through the fog. Each step he takes feels like walking through someone else's dream. The sand glows dimly underfoot, tiny creatures lighting the path behind him, a trail of blue fire fading with every step. He pauses, once looks back. The ocean lies quiet, its surface smooth as glass again. Only the faint whisper of waves keeps the night alive. He murmurs, "Sleep well, old friend." Then he climbs the path to the tower. Inside, the lantern still turns its flame steady, its pulse familiar. He closes the door behind him and listens one last time. Through the walls, he can still hear it, that low, steady breathing of the sea. He realizes then that maybe the sea doesn't just dream. Maybe it dreams through him. Every night he keeps the light alive. He becomes part of its dreaming. A flicker of warmth inside the great blue mind of the world. He sits by the window boots, still wet hands, warmed by the glow of the lantern. Outside the ocean glimmers faintly resting, dreaming, remembering. He whispers, "If you dream of me, I'll keep dreaming of you." And for a long moment the world answers, not with words, but with the hush of waves turning softly in their sleep. The wind comes early tonight. Before the moon has climbed the sky, before the sea has settled into its slow rhythm, the wind arrives curious, restless, full of stories. It circles the tower, first testing every crack in the stone, every loose hinge and rope. It hums against the glass, like a voice clearing its throat, and the keeper smiles. He knows this sound. It has come before, not every night, but on nights when the world feels ready to remember something. He opens the narrow window at the top of the lighthouse. The wind rushes in cold and salt-sweet, carrying the scent of distant rain. It moves through the room like a living thing, touching everything. The maps, the books, the cup on the table. Each object stirs as if awakened by an unseen hand. Then the wind finds him. It brushes his cheek, slides through his hair, and for a moment it feels almost human, like a greeting from someone long gone. He closes his eyes. The air moves around his face, a whisper so faint he can almost believe it forms words. "I've brought you a letter," the wind seems to say. The keeper chuckles softly. He's too old to chase ghosts, but too kind to dismiss them. He nods toward the window. "All right then," he murmurs. "Let's hear it." The wind swirls once, then settles near the lantern, making the flame bend and dance. Its voice is not a single sound, but a collection of them. The low hum of air through glass, the sigh of rope against wood, the distant cry of gulls. Together they form something like a sentence. "It's been a long journey," the wind says, "but I never forget where I've been." The keeper listens. He has no reason to doubt it. The wind is the only traveler who never stops, a wanderer that touches every shore and carries pieces of them all. "What do you carry tonight?" he asks softly. The flame steadies, and the voice grows clearer. "Memories," the wind replies. "Old ones, yours, some you left behind without meaning to." The keeper leans against the window frame. The night beyond is dark, but the air itself seems alive with motion, as if invisible pages were turning all around him. The first memory arrives as a scent. He smells the port of his youth rope and tar, and the faint sweetness of oranges unloaded from a ship long gone. He sees the harbour lights flicker, feels the rough deck beneath his boots. Voices echo familiar, far away like laughter, carried across years. He says nothing. The wind already knows. "You were happy," then it whispers. "I was," he admits, "for a while, and then you left." He nods. "I had to." The wind doesn't argue. It never does. It only moves shifting through the room, tracing the outline of every silence. Another gust comes softer this time, and with it a different memory. The sound of paper rustling letters once written, never sent. He used to write them on quiet nights, to no one in particular, to the world perhaps, to the sea, to the person he might have been if he hadn't chosen this solitude. The wind finds one of those letters now tucked inside a forgotten drawer. It slips it free, lets the paper flutter to the floor. The keeper bends to pick it up. The ink is faded, but he can still read the first line. If anyone ever hears this, it means the wind kept its promise. He laughs quiet, disbelieving. "So you did deliver it after all," he says. The wind stirs proud of itself. It begins to move faster, spinning gently around the lantern. The flame flutters, but does not falter. Light and air play together, each bending toward the other like two old friends who never learned to say goodbye. The keeper can almost hear voices hidden within the wind's song, snippets of conversations lost to time. The storm will pass. Keep the light burning. We'll see you again. He doesn't know if they're real memories or just the sea playing tricks. It doesn't matter. They comfort him all the same. For a while the wind says nothing. It only lingers, curling through the open window, turning the pages of his logbook. He watches it, move gentle and aimless. It seems reluctant to leave. Finally it whispers again, "Do you ever write back?" The question surprises him. He's never thought to. To whom would he send it? The sky, the waves, the world itself. He looks at the empty page before him. Maybe that's how it starts. He dips his pen into the ink. The wind waits, quiet, expectant. He writes, "To the wind who remembers me, thank you for carrying what I could not keep. Thank you for coming back." He leaves the letter unsealed on the table. The wind brushes it, once lifting the corner gently, as if in approval. Then it slips out the window, taking the letter with it. The room feels emptier afterward, but in a kind way like a space left open for something to return. He closes the window, though he knows the wind will find its way in again someday. It always does. The flame steadies its glow, soft and constant. He sits for a while, listening to the faint echoes outside the sea, moving against the rocks, the wind still murmuring somewhere beyond the tower. He imagines it carrying his words away, over the waves past sleeping villages, through forests and valleys and cities that have forgotten how to listen. And maybe, just maybe, someone will feel it brush their face and wonder for a moment if the wind was trying to say hello. He leans back, closing his eyes. The lantern hums behind him, a soft and steady heartbeat. The world breathes around him. He doesn't feel lonely anymore. The wind is still out there, writing its invisible letters across the night. He whispers into the quiet, "Take care of them for me." A faint gust answers barely enough to stir the flame, but it's enough. The keeper smiles. Outside, the wind moves on, carrying its collection of voices and dreams, letters without names, messages without destinations, to wherever the night might need them most. Feels no distance at all. Some nights the keeper dreams of a ship, not the way sailors dream of storms or safe harbors, but the way a man dreams of something that was supposed to come and never did. He doesn't know why this night feels different, why the fog seems softer, why the horizon glows faintly with a light that isn't his, but he feels it, the echo of a memory returning across the sea. Years ago, long before the loneliness of the island had settled into his bones, a ship was meant to come. He remembers the name, the Meridian. It was small, built for carrying mail, and people never meant for heavy storms. She was due at dusk, bringing supplies, letters, and a few faces he hadn't seen in months. He'd prepared everything that evening. The path lanterns lit the signal flags, raised the kettle set for tea. But night came, and the horizon stayed empty. By dawn the sea had turned itself inside out, grey and violent, as if the world had forgotten how to be gentle. He never saw the Meridian again. The official report said the same things. Reports always say, lost in fog, no survivors found, presumed sunk. But the sea has its own kind of mercy. It never confirms what it takes. It just holds it quietly forever between its tides. Tonight, as the wind calms and the moon rises, he thinks he can almost see her again, a faint outline in the mist, no brighter than a dream. The lantern light reaches out toward it, a trembling finger across the dark. He knows it's impossible. He knows the mind plays tricks in solitude, but he watches anyway. The shape drifts closer, silver and uncertain. It doesn't disturb. The water doesn't make a sound. And for the first time in years, he feels no fear, only recognition. He steps outside. The air is cool and damp, salt clinging to every breath. The tower glows behind him, a quiet heartbeat of gold. Below the waves are calm, as if the sea itself is waiting. He walks to the edge of the rocks, the lantern in his hand, swaying with the rhythm of his steps. The outline of the ship hovers on the horizon, not moving forward, not fading away. It feels like a question the night has been holding too long. He remembers the last person he spoke to from that ship, a young woman named Elara. She had promised to bring him a new journal and a jar of honey from the mainland. She'd laughed as she said goodbye, her hair caught in the wind. He hadn't known that laughter would echo for years. Now, in the hush between waves, he almost hears it again. It doesn't ache the way it used to. It feels lighter, like a song carried back by the wind after traveling too far to stay sad. He lifts the lantern higher, its light spilling across the surface of the sea. The fog catches the glow, shaping it into a faint bridge of gold. For a heartbeat, it looks as if the ship might cross it. He whispers into the night, "It's all right. You don't have to come anymore." The fog stirs, and the ship's outline begins to fade. But he doesn't feel loss this time. He feels release. Because some things are never meant to arrive, they're meant to stay on the horizon, beautiful because they never touch the shore. He stands there for a long while, the sea breathing at his feet. He remembers how angry he was once at the storm, at fate, at the sea for taking what it wanted. Now he sees it differently. The ocean doesn't take. It keeps. It remembers what we can't bear to hold. Somewhere beneath the quiet waves, the ship still travels, unbroken, unending, sailing through the world's deep dream. He lowers the lantern and sits on the rocks. The stone is cold, but the air feels kind. He watches the fog roll in again, soft and deliberate. It covers everything, the sky, the water, the light, and for a moment it feels like the world is closing its eyes. He takes the old journal from his coat pocket, the one Elara was supposed to replace all those years ago. Its pages are thin and yellowed edges, curled by damp air. He opens to a blank page and writes slowly. "To the ship that never arrived, thank you for teaching me patience, and for reminding me that not all waiting is wasted." He lets the ink dry, then tears the page free. He folds it once, twice, and sets it afloat on the tide. The paper drifts away, caught by the current, turning slowly under the moonlight. It looks for a breath, like a sail. The night deepens. The lantern's light grows softer. He feels the weight of years settle gently on his shoulders, not heavy, just present. He thinks of all the things that never arrived letters, faces days he thought he'd live differently. They all live somewhere out there now, in the quiet places between waves. And somehow, that feels enough. When he returns to the tower, he pauses at the door, looks back one last time. The sea lies still, reflecting the faintest trace of dawn. No ship, no sound, only light and the endless forgiving rhythm of the tide. He smiles not because he's forgotten, but because remembering no longer hurts. The world moves forward and so does he. Inside the lantern hums softly its glow, waiting for him. He places his hand against the glass, warm, alive, steady. He speaks to it quietly, the way one speaks to an old friend. She's home now, wherever that is. Then he sits down, listening as the sea exhales beneath the window. The sound is calm, the night is kind. And the keeper, for the first time in a long while, the night sky unfolds slowly, as if the world has turned its face upward, inviting the stars to speak. The keeper steps outside the tower. The air is colder, tonight clear and weightless, the kind of air that lets every sound travel farther than it should. The lantern behind him spins its golden arc across the sea, but it feels small compared to the vastness above. For once even the wind is quiet. Only the stars are awake, and they are whispering. He tilts his head back. At first it sounds like the hush of distant waves, but slowly the murmurs separate thin, silvery threads of sound woven across the sky. They don't form words exactly. They're more like notes of music remembered from another life. Yet somehow he understands them. Each whisper falls gently into him like snow that doesn't melt. "We have been watching you," the stars seem to say. He smiles softly. "I've been watching you too." One of the brighter stars flickers. It feels almost like laughter. "Do you know what we are?" it asks. He thinks for a moment, eyes tracing the constellation's faint geometry. "Light," he answers. "Distant light," the star replies. "Light is only half the truth. We are memories that never fade." He doesn't ask whose memories theirs, the universe's, or his own. It doesn't matter. He believes them. He sits on the steps outside the lighthouse, hands resting on his knees. The stone still holds the warmth of the day. Above him the Milky Way stretches like a road made of dust and dreams. It hums faintly, a sound too soft for ears, but the bones can feel it. He closes his eyes. The stars continue to speak. We remember everything they say. The waves that rose and fell. The first fire that learned to burn. The hands that built your tower. Their voices overlap. Ancient and gentle, 1,000 tones, merging into one breath. He opens his eyes again. The stars shimmer brighter now, as if each of them wants to be heard. He imagines their light, traveling across centuries, through storms, through silence, through the space between one heartbeat and the next. It reaches him tonight, and he feels small but never alone. When we speak, the stars continue. We are not speaking to you. We are speaking through you. The words vibrate in his chest, settling into the hollow places he thought were empty. He glances toward the sea. It lies still, a black mirror for the sky. For every star above, there's another below, trembling softly on the water's skin. He realizes then the sea isn't separate from the heavens. It's their reflection. Perhaps he thinks the stars have always been whispering to the sea, and he has only ever been caught in the middle, the listener between two infinities. He remembers something the wind once told him. "I carry the voices of those who no longer speak." Maybe the stars do too. Maybe light itself is the language of the departed, each spark, a word, each constellation, a story. He wonders how many voices are shining above him now, how many souls have turned to light. "Do you remember them all?" he asks quietly. The stars shimmer once more. "Not one is ever lost," they answer. "But we forget on purpose sometimes, so that you may remember." He doesn't understand. At first then he does. If the sky held everything forever, there would be no room left for dreams. He breathes in the air crisp with starlight. It feels clean, like forgiveness. He speaks again to no one and to everything. "Do you remember the meridian?" The sea answers with a hush. The stars flicker in recognition. She passed beneath us once, they say. Her lights burned bright. We guided her as far as we could. He nods. I thought so. Nothing ends. The stars whisper. Some journeys simply change direction. He looks at the horizon, a faint silver line where the ocean meets the night. Somewhere beyond it, he imagines a ship sailing on a sea of light. He stays like that for a long while, watching, listening, until the whispers blend into silence again. The stars dim slightly, but he knows they're not gone. They've simply gone quiet the way friends do, when words are no longer needed. He speaks softly, a farewell carried by the air. Thank you for keeping the sky alive. No voice replies, but one star brightens, a brief shimmer, a nod. Then the quiet returns. He stands and walks back toward the tower. The lantern still spins, casting its steady beam across the dark. It feels small compared to the stars, yet somehow part of them, a fragment of their infinite speech. Inside, he lights another small candle on his desk. Its flame dances in the draught, tiny and trembling. He watches it for a long time. A single flame, a single star, both the same story, told in different languages of light. Before turning in, he opens his logbook. On a fresh page, he writes, "The stars spoke tonight. They said the universe remembers, but chooses kindness over perfection." He sets the pen down, leaving the ink to dry. Outside, the first pale glow of dawn brushes the sea. The stars fade slowly one by one, as if they are tucking the night back into itself. He whispers, "Rest well, my friends," and as the sky lightens, he swears. He hears one last voice, a fading hum woven through the wind. We will return when darkness needs a song. The night does not begin, it unfolds. It rises from the horizon like a slow tide, and at its center, the moon waits. She is larger than usual tonight, hung low above the water, her light not white but pale gold, as though she too remembers the warmth of the sun and has chosen to keep a little of it for herself. The keeper watches her from the tower. He has seen 1,000 moons, but this one feels different, closer, listening. The lantern turns beside him, its steady heartbeat of light, mirroring the rhythm in his chest. Outside, the sea is still. No wind, no wave, only reflection. For a long time he stands there, the two lights, his and hers, speaking across the quiet water. Her light moves through the glass, spilling across his hands, his face, the worn floorboards of the room. It feels like touch. Soft, impossible, familiar. He remembers the first night he came to this island. The moon was thinner then, a silver thread barely holding itself together. He'd thought it lonely, a mirror of his own silence. Tonight she is full, complete. And yet he wonders if fullness has ever been the same as peace. He steps outside. The air hums faintly as if charged with the quiet electricity of a dream. The path to the shore glows faintly beneath her light. Each grain of sand shines like dust from a forgotten sky. He walks until the sound of his boots is the only thing alive in the night. The lantern sways at his side, but its glow seems small compared to hers. When he reaches the water, he stops. The moon lies stretched upon the surface, her reflection trembling with the faint movement of the tide. For a moment, he cannot tell which is the real one, the moon above or the one beneath. Perhaps he thinks they are both real and both unreachable. The sea breathes once a slow inhale. The reflection ripples. Something stirs inside him, that quiet ache of recognition, the way the soul sometimes trembles when it sees its own shape in the world. He kneels, lets his hand hover above the water. The moonlight wraps around his fingers like a ghost, trying to remember how to touch. The night feels suspended, held between heartbeat and silence. He has spoken to wind and wave, to stars and shadows. But the moon is different. She doesn't need words. Her language is light. And light, he has learned, is the oldest form of understanding. He feels her watching him, not judging, not pitying, just knowing, the way one lonely thing knows another. The years fall away. He is no longer old nor young. He simply is a flicker of life between one dawn and the next. He wonders if she feels the same. If every night she rises alone above an ocean that never keeps still, and wonders who, if anyone, is looking back. He almost smiles. Perhaps that is why she shines, because somewhere below someone might be waiting for her light, and tonight that someone is him. The wind begins to stir again, but softly, as if careful not to break the spell. It carries the scent of salt and thyme and the faint echo of the stars' last whispers. He looks up at her, the moon framed by drifting clouds. They move slowly across her face, and for a moment she seems to close her eyes. He imagines her dreaming of tides that never end, of shores she cannot touch, of the warmth of a sun she will never hold again. And he understands. He has lived that dream too. The water creeps toward his boots. He doesn't move. The cold doesn't bother him. It feels honest, like truth washing the body clean. He speaks then, not aloud, but in the way one speaks to a memory. If you are lonely, he thinks you are not alone. The thought drifts upward, though he doesn't know if she hears. Then again, maybe she always has. A thin mist begins to rise from the sea. It curls around him, silver in her light, and for a fleeting moment it feels as if the air itself has taken shape. A figure, a presence. He can't be sure. But when the wind moves through it, he feels warmth instead of cold. The mist brightens, a shimmer, a breath, a heartbeat of light. It's not her, not really, and yet he knows it is. The moment stretches fragile and endless. Then, as all things must, it fades. The mist dissolves, the sea exhales, and the night grows still again. Only the moon remains steady, patient, luminous. She has not come closer. She has not gone away. She simply watches, as she always has. And he, for the first time, feels seen. He turns back toward the lighthouse. The path gleams like a ribbon of silver. Behind him, the moon hangs low, a soft witness to his quiet return. Inside, the lantern hums small human warm. He looks at its flame, then out the window at the moon. For a long moment, the two lights regard each other, one born of fire, the other of reflection, both made of longing. He writes a single line in his logbook. Tonight, the moon and I remembered what it means to wait. He closes the book, and the sound feels final, like the closing of a chapter only the night could have written. The moonlight spills across his desk. It glows on his hands, his face, his breath. He whispers, barely a sound, a thank you he cannot fully name. Then he sits in silence, bathed in gold and stillness, while the moon drifts slowly west, pulling the tide and the keeper's heart gently toward another dawn. The sea has forgotten how to move. It lies still beneath the morning moon, a sheet of glass stretched to the edge of the world. The keeper stands at the foot of the lighthouse boots, sinking slightly into wet sand. The tide has retreated far, leaving behind a wide basin of mirrored water, thin, perfect, and impossibly calm. It's the kind of stillness that feels deliberate, as though the world itself has paused, holding its breath for something sacred. He looks down. The reflection is clear enough to mistake for truth. The lighthouse rises behind him in reverse, its golden window hanging upside down in the sea. And there he is, a man etched in light and salt, a quiet silhouette beneath the vastness of the sky. For a long time he simply watches. He's seen himself in mirrors before polished glass tin the surface of a cup, but this feels different. The reflection breathes with him. It feels alive. The longer he stares, the less the reflection looks like him now. The lines fade. The silver in his beard softens. The weight in his shoulders lifts. He blinks, and before him stands a younger man, barefoot, sunburned, eyes still full of sky. The keeper feels his breath catch. He doesn't move. He's afraid that if he does, the image will ripple and vanish. But it doesn't. The water stays still. The younger version of himself looks back not as memory, but as presence. He remembers that face. He remembers that day, the morning he first came to the island. He'd been so sure of everything then. The sea was adventure, not burden. The light was duty, not solitude. He had thought he could outlast loneliness simply by being strong. Now he looks at the boy he was and wonders if he ever truly knew what strength meant. The reflection tilts its head, mimicking his thoughts, and for a strange moment it feels like they are studying each other, the man and the memory, each unsure who is the dream of whom. The tide does not move. Even the wind seems to wait. He thinks of the decades that separate them of everything the boy could not yet imagine. The long nights, the lost ship, the sound of wind that carries no voices back. Would the younger him still have chosen this life if he had known? He wants to believe yes, but he isn't sure. The younger reflection smiles suddenly. It's a small, careless thing, but it feels like sunlight after rain. The keeper finds himself smiling back. He remembers that smile, the one that believed every dawn was a promise. It had faded somewhere along the years, replaced by a quieter kind of hope, one that no longer needed proof. He feels warmth rise in his chest, not regret, but tenderness. He wants to reach out. He wants to tell the boy that the sea will both take and give, that the light will be his companion, that the waiting will teach him how to love the silence. But the words would only break the surface, so he stays still. A gull passes overhead, its shadow slicing across the reflection. For a heartbeat, the image trembles. When it clears, the younger man has changed again. His face has grown a little older, his eyes darker, the innocence tempered, but not lost. It's not one version he sees now, it's all of them. The boy, the dreamer, the sailor, the man who stayed. Each layered within the mirror like tides in glass. He realizes then that this isn't a vision of the past. It's a map of his becoming. He kneels at the edge of the water. The reflection kneels with him. Their faces align perfectly, one above one below, divided only by the thinnest skin of sea. He whispers softly, not to the reflection but to the silence between them. You did well. The tide listens. The reflection ripples once, then steadies again, as if accepting the words. He feels a weight lift from somewhere deep inside, a quiet forgiveness that needs no reply. A soft wind begins to stir. The mirror of tides shivers, lines of light crossing its surface. The reflection starts to break fragment by fragment, 1,000 pieces of himself dissolving into motion. He doesn't try to stop it. The sea was never meant to hold still forever. He stands watching as the image fades. The water becomes just water again, grey, endless, alive. Yet the peace remains. The silence feels full, as though every version of him has found a place within it. He turns back toward the tower. The light still turns in slow, patient circles. He knows he will keep tending it, not because he must, but because he chooses to. As he climbs the path, the tide follows behind him, washing away his footprints one by one. It feels right. It feels like beginning again. At the top of the lighthouse, he pauses by the window. The sea glimmers faintly below the mirror now, a memory. He looks out, and in the reflection of the glass, he catches his own face once more. Older, softer, whole. He nods to it, not farewell, but recognition. Then he turns back to the lantern, adjusts its flame, and lets the night carry its light outward, to whatever hearts might need it. The world wakes slowly. The sea, still wearing its night, begins to shift a faint shimmer, tracing the edges of every wave. For the first time in many nights, the keeper feels warmth on his face. Not the soft glow of his lantern, but something greater, older. The true fire of morning. The sun has returned. He stands at the top of the lighthouse, the wind brushing against his coat, carrying the scent of new light. The glass around the lantern glows faintly pink, catching the first reflection of dawn. Below him, the tide breathes in slow rhythm, and the sky begins its quiet transformation, indigo softening to violet, violet to gold. Every color feels like forgiveness. He had forgotten how the sea looks at sunrise, how the light moves across it like a hand smoothing the wrinkles of sleep, how the water seems to stretch, to reach, as if yearning to touch the sky. The keeper watches in silence. The moment feels fragile, like something the world could break if it looked too closely. And yet it endures. Light always endures. He thinks of all the nights that came before the endless turning of the lantern, the conversations with wind and wave and stars. Each had taught him something, but only now does he understand what for. It was never about waiting for the light to return. It was about learning to keep it alive, even when the sky forgot how. The horizon glows brighter. He narrows his eyes, the gold spilling wider and wider until it becomes everything. And there, just beyond the shimmer, something moves. At first, he thinks it's the reflection of a cloud. But no, it arcs too gracefully, too certain in its motion. A single bird, small and white, cutting across the golden line of the morning. He hasn't seen a bird here in months. The storms had taken most of them away. The silence of the island had become its own kind of sky. But now this one flies steady, its wings bright against the dawn. It circles once above the tower, its cry sharp and pure, the sound of a heart remembering how to open. The keeper's chest tightens. He lifts his hand, not to call it, but simply to greet it. The bird passes overhead once more, then turns eastward toward the open horizon. He watches it go. Something inside him stirs. Not longing exactly, but a sense of return, as if the world is gently turning back toward itself. He realizes he is smiling, not out of joy, but out of understanding. The kind that arrives softly, like dawn on the skin. He whispers to the wind, not expecting an answer. "You found your way home." The wind replies with a sigh, not words, but warmth. The sea mirrors the growing sun now. Its surface ripples with gold and rose and silver. The waves are small, playful, as though the ocean itself has woken from a long dream. He steps outside down the stone stairs that lead toward the shore. Each step feels lighter, as though gravity has loosened its grip for a while. When he reaches the water's edge, The tide touches his boots, a gentle greeting. He looks down. No reflection this time. The sea is too alive for stillness. But that's all right. He has already met the man he used to be. Now, he is simply here. The warmth grows. It slides across the water, climbs the rocks, finds its way into the cracks of the old tower. Every beam of light feels deliberate, as if the sun is searching for what was once hidden. He closes his eyes. Behind his lids the world glows red and soft. He lets it fill him, not as blaze but as breath. For the first time in a long while, he doesn't feel like he's guarding the light. He feels like he is it. A faint sound breaks the silence. Wings. He opens his eyes. The bird has returned, circling low over the shore. In its beak, something glints, a sliver of shell, or perhaps a piece of glass catching the newborn light. It drops the fragment near his feet, then rises again, climbing into the brightness until it disappears. He bends down. The object lies half buried in wet sand. He picks it up. It's a shard of sea glass, smooth and translucent, washed by years into gentleness. Inside it, the sunlight dances, a tiny private sunrise held in his palm. He holds it for a long time, watching the light shift within. It's nothing more than glass, and yet somehow everything, a reminder that even broken things can catch the morning. He tucks it into his coat pocket and turns back toward the lighthouse. When he reaches the tower, the lantern's glow has faded in the daylight. It looks small now, almost unnecessary, but he knows better. Light doesn't vanish in brightness. It just changes places. He steps inside. The walls are warm. The air smells faintly of salt. And Sunday, he sets the shard of glass on the windowsill, where the rising light hits it just right, a second lantern born of sea and time. For a moment, he simply stands there, listening to the hum of the morning. Somewhere far out at sea, the waves whisper against the horizon, and though he cannot see it, he knows the bird is still flying, carrying the day forward, tracing a new path across the sky. He exhales. The sound feels like peace. He looks once more at the ocean, its endless shimmer of gold. The light has returned not as something found, but as something remembered. And as the sun climbs higher, he feels it, the faint pull of the world, asking, inviting, beginning again. Morning drifts across the island like a whisper. The light, new and golden, slides along the walls of the lighthouse, finding every corner it had forgotten during the long dark. The keeper moves slowly, his body still remembering the rhythm of the night. Outside, the tide murmurs against the rocks, a language older than speech, patient, untranslatable. On the windowsill, where the shard of sea glass catches the sunlight, something else gleams beside it, a feather. He doesn't remember placing it there. It must have fallen during the dawn wind, or perhaps the bird from yesterday had left it as it passed overhead. But it feels deliberate, as if it had chosen this place, chosen him. It's small, no longer than his palm, white at the base, darkening to a soft grey blue at the tip. The light runs through it, veins glowing faintly like rivers beneath skin. He reaches out. The feather trembles, though there is no wind. For a moment, the room seems to hold its breath. He turns it between his fingers, its light impossibly so, the weight of something that could fall forever and never truly land. Yet there's a warmth in it, a pulse, almost as if it remembers flight. The keeper feels a strange pull in his chest, a quiet recognition. The same feeling he'd had the first time he saw the sea, the first time he lit the lantern, the first time he realized the light wasn't only for others. This too feels like a beginning. He takes the feather outside. The morning air greets him soft and salt-sweet. The sea glimmers, and the horizon is clear, the kind of day that promises calm but hides 1,000 possibilities. He lifts the feather toward the light. The sun passes through it, splitting into faint colors like a prism hidden in something living. It shouldn't be possible, but the world has stopped obeying the rules he once believed in. He turns the feather again. At a certain angle, the veins within seem to align, forming a faint pattern, a curve, a line, a mark that looks almost like writing. He squints, but the harder he looks, the less certain he becomes. The mark shifts as though it's alive only in his periphery. Not a word he realizes, but a direction, a path. The line points east, toward the open horizon, toward the place the bird had flown. He lowers the feather heart, steady but awake, in a way it hasn't been in years. He thinks of all the nights he has stood here watching the waves break and return, believing that his purpose ended with the shore. But now the sea seems to whisper something else. That the light is not a boundary, it's an invitation. He looks down at the feather again. It feels alive in his hand, thrumming faintly, as if urging him to move. He walks down the path to the beach. The air grows warmer, the world sharper. Every color feels newly born. When he reaches the shore, the tide is low and quiet. The sand glows faintly, still holding traces of the dawn. He kneels, presses the feather into the wet earth. The imprint it leaves is perfect, a delicate shape almost like a signature. The sea curls forward, touches the mark, then retreats, carrying a piece of it away. He watches the feather float light, as breath spinning once before the water claims it. It doesn't sink. It drifts outward, following the pull of the tide toward the horizon. A small part of him aches, but another part, the one that has learned the language of leaving, understands. Everything that comes to him eventually belongs to the world again. Still, he can't shake the feeling that the feather is not leaving him, but leading. The sunlight climbs higher. The ocean becomes a mirror of gold. In that reflection, he sees his own face again, older, softer, awake. Behind him, the lighthouse stands bright against the morning sky. The lantern within still turns its beam, pale in daylight but steadfast. He thinks of the long years of silence and waiting, and how each night had been a preparation for this single moment of understanding. Light was never meant to stay still. It travels, it seeks, it carries. Perhaps he thinks so, should he? He stays by the water until the feather is only a glint in the distance. Then he turns toward the tower. The path feels different underfoot, familiar, but charged as though every step hums with possibility. When he reaches the door, he pauses. The sunlight floods the threshold, touching everything within: the books, the maps, the shell, the shard of glass still glowing on the sill. He realizes the feather has left its message, even without words. It has reminded him that flight is not escape, it's continuation. He sits at his desk and opens the logbook. The page glows in the light. He writes slowly. A feather arrived with the morning. It pointed east. I do not yet know what waits there, only that the sea has begun to call again. He sets down the pen, reads the words once, then closes the book gently. The sound feels like the closing of a circle, not an ending, but a heartbeat between one story and the next. He looks out the window again. The sky is clear, the horizon endless. Somewhere beyond it, a bird flies, carrying the rest of the morning with it. The keeper smiles a quiet, knowing curve of the lips. The world is wide, the light has returned, And the sea is no longer asking him to stay still. The morning comes with a sound he hasn't heard in years, the sound of motion, not the wind or the waves, but something quieter, deeper, a pulse beneath the sea like the ocean, remembering what it means to move forward. The keeper stands at the edge of the dock, the world washed in gold. Behind him, the lighthouse glows faintly in the early sun, its light still turning, though it no longer needs to. Today, he will leave it behind. The decision was made in silence, long before his hands ever touched the rope or the oars. He had felt it the moment he found the feather, and again when he saw it drift east, a promise too subtle to ignore. Now the promise has become direction. A small boat waits at the shore, weathered but strong, its paint faded by years of salt and solitude. He'd repaired it over many slow afternoons, never truly knowing why. Now he understands. Some things we build long before we know what for. He lowers his lantern carefully into the boat. Its light is dim in the daylight, but he cannot bring himself to leave it. It has been his companion, his heartbeat, his only voice in the dark. The flame flickers once, as if in recognition, then steadies, ready to travel. He looks back at the lighthouse one last time. The tower stands quiet and proud, its glass, catching the sunlight, its reflection, stretching across the tide like memory. It has watched over him for decades. It has been his home, his keeper, his mirror. Now it will belong to the horizon. He steps into the boat. The wood creaks beneath his weight, a soft complaint, but a willing one. He sits, takes the oars in hand. The sea is calm, each stroke gentle, each pull carrying him farther from the shore. The sound of the water against the hull is steady and hypnotic, like breathing. Behind him, the lighthouse grows smaller until it becomes just another shape in the light. The sun climbs higher. Its warmth fills the air, the salt, the space between heartbeats. He rows without hurry. For once there is no urgency, no storm to outrun, no duty pressing on his shoulders. Every movement feels like ceremony, the quiet act of saying yes to life again. He glances eastward. The light there is unlike any he's seen. It shimmers with something unspoken, as though the day itself is being born anew. A gull circles above, then another. They follow him for a while, their cries sharp and bright, echoing across the open sea. He smiles. It feels like a blessing, a farewell, and a welcome, all at once. He thinks of the years behind him, the wind that spoke in riddles, the stars that whispered of memory, the sea that taught him to forgive. All of them have guided him here, to this quiet crossing between what was and what will be. The horizon stretches endless before him, blue upon blue. There's no visible destination, and yet he doesn't doubt the way. The sea itself seems to part gently, opening a path of light across its surface. He follows it, oars rising and falling in rhythm. The boat glides through gold and silver, each ripple glinting like a small eternity. He feels the air change warmer, lighter, as though the world ahead exists in another key. He breathes it in. It smells like distance and possibility. He pauses to rest, letting the boat drift. The lantern sways beside him, its flame dancing faintly in the morning air. He reaches out, touches the glass gently. "You've done well," he murmurs. "Now we carry the light together." The wind answers softly, stirring the sea in small, shining ripples. He looks over the side of the boat. The water is so clear that he can see the shadow of his reflection moving with him, not perfect, not still, but alive. He watches it for a long time, the way it shifts and reforms, with each wave never holding shape for long, yet always returning. It reminds him of himself, of how the years have broken and remade him, each tide smoothing away what wasn't needed, leaving only what could endure. Hours pass, though time feels softer here, uninterested in counting. The lighthouse has vanished from sight, now swallowed by distance and light. He doesn't feel its absence. He feels its presence everywhere, in the steady rhythm of the sea, in the flame that burns beside him, in the strength of his hands as they guide the oars. Light was never meant to belong to one place. It was meant to travel. A shadow crosses his path. A gull again, perhaps the same one from before. It glides low, its wings slicing through sunlight. Something white drifts down behind it, spinning slowly through the air. A feather. It lands on the surface of the water, floats beside the boat, then drifts ahead eastward. He laughs softly under his breath. "Still leading me," he says. He dips one oar gently and follows. The sun is high now. The sea stretches bright and endless before him. The feather glows like a thread of light, pulling him forward through the shimmer. He doesn't know what waits beyond the horizon. Perhaps land. Perhaps nothing at all. But for the first time, he doesn't need to know. The journey itself is the destination. As he rows, he feels the world behind him dissolve into warmth. The air hums with quiet music, waves, wind, light, all in harmony. He glances east toward that vast, radiant distance. It feels less like leaving and more like returning. He grips the oars once more, takes a breath, and lets the sea carry him forward east of the light into the new day. The sea is vast and quiet. The line between water and sky blurs until the world feels like one single breath drawn and never exhaled. The keeper rows without hurry. Each pull of the oar feels like a heartbeat, a rhythm that belongs not just to him, but to something older, something patient. The light in his lantern glows faintly beside him. It doesn't fight the morning. It simply exists, a small flame moving through a greater one. He glances at the horizon. It is not just distant now. It feels alive. At first, he thinks it's the sound of the wind shifting, a low hum threading through the air. Then it comes again, softer this time, as though the horizon itself has found a voice. It doesn't speak in words. It breathes. The sound moves through him, rather than toward him, filling the space behind his ribs with warmth. He stops rowing. The boat drifts. The world listens. The voice is everywhere and nowhere. It hums through the oars, through the salt air, through the pulse in his wrists. It's not human, but not unfamiliar. He closes his eyes. The voice deepens, shaped by the slow exhale of the sea. "You have carried the light far." He doesn't know if he truly hears it, or if it's his own thought echoing back. But the words settle inside him like calm rain. He opens his mouth not to answer, but to breathe the sound in. The air feels different now, thicker with presence, as though the horizon is leaning closer. The voice continues, not spoken but felt. "You have waited, and the world has waited with you." The light remembers its keeper. His hands tremble slightly on the oars. He looks down at the water. Ripples move across the surface, slow, circular, as if responding to an unseen touch. The reflection of the sky quivers, and for a heartbeat, he sees something, a pattern in the light, a shimmer like wings beneath the surface. Then it's gone. He exhales. The sound leaves his chest like surrender. Why now, he whispers. Why speak? After all this silence, the horizon glows faintly the color of pearl and dawn. The voice answers soft and certain, because you learned to listen. He feels tears rise not from sadness, but from recognition. The sea has been speaking all along through storms, through calm, through the endless turning of the light. He just never understood its language until now. He tilts his head back, eyes half closed. The wind brushes his face gently, almost like a hand. "Where do I go?" he asks. For a long time, there is no reply. Then the light shifts again, and the voice returns, woven through the hush of the waves. "You are already on your way." He lets the words sink into him. The fear that had lingered at the edges of his heart, fear of distance, of meaning, of being forgotten, fades like fog. Everything is as it should be. The sea is not behind him. The lighthouse is not gone. They have simply changed shape. They live now in movement, in the breath between silence and sound. The sun climbs higher. The light turns white sharp as clarity. The sea sparkles endlessly, as if thousands of tiny voices laugh in the light. He rose again, but not to escape or arrive. Each stroke feels like agreement, a wordless promise between him and the horizon. He thinks of the feather, the glass, the quiet nights when he believed the world had stopped turning. He realizes now nothing ever stopped. It only waited for him to notice. The voice grows fainter, but not farther. It's inside everything now, in the rhythm of his breath, in the heartbeat of the sea, in the small flame beside him. "Do not seek the edge," it whispers. The light does not end, it changes. He smiles, eyes still closed. "Then I'll follow it," he murmurs. Wherever it changes next, the wind answers with a sigh, a sound that could be laughter. He opens his eyes. The horizon gleams like glass, not distant but near, as if the world has folded slightly to meet him halfway. He feels no need to chase it. He rows once, twice, and the sea carries him forward with ease as if grateful. Above a bird crosses the sky. It cries once, and the sound echoes through the morning, not lonely, but whole. He watches until the bird becomes a dot of light, then turns his gaze back to the horizon. The voice is gone now. Or perhaps it was never truly separate from the silence. He feels it still woven into the rhythm of the sea, the pulse of his own heart, the steady warmth of the lantern's flame. He rows on, guided not by sight, but by the knowing that wherever he goes, the light goes too. The sea has turned to silk. No wind, no wave. Only the slow shimmer of afternoon light, the kind that hums instead of shines. The keeper rows less now. The oars barely touch the water. The boat glides on its own, drawn by a current too gentle to name. He feels it. Before he sees it, a stillness, unlike any he's known, the air thicker with gold, as if the day itself has paused to breathe. This, he realizes, is where the light rests. The horizon softens. The sky folds inward blue, fading to pale honey, and for the first time the sun seems to hover, not rising, not falling, just being. It doesn't dazzle him. It doesn't demand reverence. It simply stays. He sets the oars down. The sound of wood against wood is small, like the world clearing its throat after a long silence. The sea reflects everything's skylight, the faint outline of his boat, until up and down become meaningless. He could close his eyes and float forever here. The air hums softly. He listens. It's not a voice this time, not words from the horizon, but something deeper, the echo of peace itself. It fills the space around him, settles on his shoulders like warmth, like forgiveness. He realizes how long he's been carrying weight, the kind that doesn't show, the kind that lives in quiet places. Here the light takes it gently, without judgment. He leans back, hands open in his lap. The lantern beside him glows faintly, its flame barely visible against the afternoon Sunday. He studies it for a while, the small, patient fire that has followed him across storms and silence. He had thought of it as his companion, his task, his duty. Now he sees it differently. It is a mirror. It burns because he does. He touches the glass gently, and the light flickers in reply as if it understands. Time forgets itself here. The shadows do not move. The air feels full but unhurried, like a held note that never ends. He wonders if this is what rest truly means. Not stopping but dissolving the need to go. The sea hums beneath him. It feels alive but not in motion. Every wave is a breath, and every breath belongs to something larger than life. He closes his eyes. The warmth seeps through him. Sun, salt, stillness, light. He can't tell where one ends and the other begins. He dreams without sleeping. In the dark behind his eyelids, the light continues to move slow, circular, like the turning of the lantern far away on the island. It gathers itself, folding gently inward, not vanishing, but resting. He sees it lying across the sea, soft and golden, a living thing breathing beside him. He wants to reach out, but the thought feels unnecessary. The light is already near. It's always been near. He opens his eyes. The world hasn't changed, only his way of seeing it. Every ripple glows. Every drop of water holds a pulse. Even the shadows gleam faintly, as if touched by kindness. He realizes he's smiling, not out of joy exactly, but out of recognition. The world feels like it's exhaling with him. He whispers softly, not to the sea, but to the moment itself. You can rest too. The air seems to shimmer in response. He lets his fingers trail across the water. It's warm. Not the warmth of summer, but of something alive, something aware. The ripples spread outward, touching light, touching sky. He feels his heartbeat slow to match the rhythm. There's no distance here, not between him and the sea, not between him and the sky. He's simply part of the breathing. The sun drifts slightly, tilting toward the horizon. It doesn't sink, just lowers its tone like music fading into the earth. He knows he will leave soon. The rest is not meant to last forever, but he also knows he'll carry this quiet wherever he goes. This is the kind of peace that travels. He lifts the oars again. The boat rocks gently, the sound small and round, like the closing of a sigh. Before he rows, he glances at the sea one more time. The light rests perfectly still upon it, a golden sheet unbroken by wave or wind. For a moment he feels as though he's looking at the heart of the world, a place so calm that even time must kneel. He nods once, not in farewell, but in gratitude. Then, with a soft breath, he dips the oars and begins to move again, slow, careful, carrying the peace of the resting light with him. The sea accepts the motion without protest. The ripples widen, but the stillness remains. As he drifts onward, the light stays behind, resting, or perhaps following invisibly within him. The island rose from the mist like a memory surfacing from sleep. At first, he thought it was a trick of light, the way morning sometimes folds the horizon into shapes that never last. But as the fog thinned, he saw rocks, a curve of shore, and the faint outline of trees trembling against the pale sky. He lifted the oars, let the current carry him closer. The air was warm, the sea calm, a silence so deep it felt like waiting. When the boat touched sand, the sound was soft, barely a whisper. He stepped onto the shore boots, sinking slightly into earth that hadn't felt footsteps in years. The island smelled of salt and pine of rain that never quite left. He looked around. No birds, no wind, only stillness. Even the waves broke carefully as though afraid to disturb whatever lived here. Then, from somewhere unseen, a sound came back to him. His own. It was faint, a single word carried by the breeze. He had just exhaled a quiet hello, and the island had answered in kind. He froze, listening. The echo returned again, softer, older, somehow like a memory, repeating itself from far away. He smiled, despite the chill it brought. It wasn't haunting. It was familiar, a voice that had followed him long before this place. He walked inland. The trees leaned gently toward each other, forming corridors of shade. Each step stirred the quiet, and each sound returned warmer, slower, as though the island was considering what to keep and what to give back. When he brushed his hand along a fallen branch, the sound of it echoed too, a faint crack, then a softer version, like a sigh echoing through time. He whispered again, half curious, half reverent. "Is anyone here?" The words returned to him perfectly, but older, as if the island spoke not from the present, but from a moment just beyond his reach. He sat on a rock by the shore. The waves moved in slow, even breaths. He could hear the echoes more clearly now. His voice, yes, but not only his words. Laughter. Songs hummed in half-sleep. A line of prayer he hadn't said in decades. All of them drifting through the air, circling back like small birds. He closed his eyes. The sounds came and went, gentle as tides. He realized the island wasn't repeating him now. It was remembering him. The thought made his chest tighten. He had spoken so much into the wind over the years, to the waves, to the stars, to no one at all. Perhaps the world had kept those words, gathered them, and brought them here. Every echo, a remnant of who he had been. Every whisper, a page of a story he'd forgotten he told. He leaned back against the rock, eyes half closed, and listened. The light remembers its keeper. You have done well. You can rest too. Words he'd heard before in dreams, in silence, now folding back through time to find him again. He smiled faintly. It felt like being forgiven. A breeze passed through the trees, carrying another sound, a lower voice, older, rougher. It was his, but not the man he was now. It was him from years ago, young, sure still, learning to bear the weight of light. The sea does not change, the echo said. Only we do. He opened his eyes. The air shimmered slightly. The voice faded, but its truth stayed. He whispered back, "Then I have changed enough." The island replied only with stillness, as if agreeing. He stayed until the sun tilted west, the light turning soft and amber. Shadows stretched long across the beach, their edges blurred by gold. He spoke again to no one, to everyone. "Thank you." The word returned at once, not faint this time, but full as though the island itself was breathing it back to him. He laughed quietly. It sounded different here, more complete, as if the world was laughing with him. As he walked back to the boat, he realized something had changed. The air was lighter, the silence no longer pressed. He had not left his words behind. He had set them free. Every echo, every memory, was part of the same light, traveling, resting, returning when it was needed. He pushed the boat into the shallows. The water welcomed him cool and familiar. As he stepped in, a last echo rose from the island. "Go on." He turned, smiled toward the trees and nodded once. "I will." He rowed away slowly. The island grew small behind him, but the echoes lingered soft as heartbeat. The light was fading, now melting into dusk, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a promise being kept. The sea whispered beneath him, carrying the sound onward. Somewhere far ahead, the horizon waited quiet and infinite, ready to listen. Night arrives without warning. It doesn't fall this time. It breathes. The sky folds over itself, its edges, drawn together by wind and distance. The sea deepens, the horizon dissolves into a slow pulse of dark. The keeper rests the oars, letting the boat drift. The world feels heavier now, but not cruelly so, like a great body leaning close to listen. He has known countless nights, each with its own silence. But this one is different. It carries sound within its quiet, a low rhythm, the echo of something vast and alive. He tilts his head. The waves hum in tones he almost recognizes. The stars flicker not randomly, but as if in response to unseen music. And the wind, oh the wind, it doesn't speak, but it understands. He closes his eyes. The night shifts around him gently like a slow inhale. He can feel it noticing him, the way his hands tremble slightly on the oar, the way his breath catches when the sea sighs. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't judge. It just listens. He exhales into the darkness, a whisper escaping without thought. "I've been so many things." The sea answers with a ripple, the sound stretching thin before returning. Not an echo, but acknowledgement. He continues softly, words, drifting like offerings. "I've waited. I've guarded. I've dreamed." The waves touch the side of the boat, a slow, tender rhythm, as though the night nods in understanding. For the first time, he doesn't feel small beneath the stars. He feels seen. The stars spread wider above him now, 1,000 listening eyes. He wonders how long they've been watching, how many nights they've gathered his unspoken thoughts. He remembers the island of echoes, the way it repeated his words. This is different. The night doesn't repeat. It absorbs. It takes his voice and turns it into silence so full, so alive, it becomes another kind of sound. The boat drifts farther. The horizon is gone. Only the vast, breathing dark remains. He looks down. The water glows faintly, stirred by his passing small lights blooming beneath the surface. Tiny stars adrift in the sea. Bioluminescence, he thinks at first, but it feels more personal than science. Every flicker appears when he exhales, as though his breath itself is creating constellations below. He whispers again, "Are you listening?" And the sea glows brighter. He laughs quietly. The sound feels strange here, both fragile and eternal. He leans back in the boat eyes, tracing the shape of constellations he doesn't know. Somewhere beyond them, he imagines the lighthouse still turning, sending its light into this same dark. He thinks of all the nights he'd believed the dark to be hollow, a place light entered, only to disappear. Now he understands, the night doesn't devour light. It keeps it, holds it, listens to it hum, long after the flame fades. The realization fills him with a deep ache, not sorrow, but tenderness for all the years he hadn't known this. He had feared the dark because he thought it was empty. He had guarded the light because he thought it was fragile. But here in this soft vastness, He sees how wrong that was. The dark is not absence, it is the body of the universe, and light is its heartbeat. He feels the air change cooler now, as if the night is leaning even closer. He speaks one last time, not with voice, but with thought. "Thank you." The stars answer by dimming slightly as though bowing. The sea stills. The wind quiets. The whole world pauses in shared breath. And in that pause he feels it a pulse beneath everything. A slow, tender vibration that feels almost human. The night's heartbeat. He sits perfectly still. The sound is faint, yet it fills every space inside him. It says nothing. It doesn't need to. It tells him wordlessly that he is not alone, that everything he's ever spoken, every silence he's ever kept has been heard. He breathes out once more, and this time the sea exhales with him. Hours pass. The stars move, the tide drifts, but the connection remains. He watches as the faintest silver rises along the far edge of the sea. Dawn. The night loosens its hold, but not its listening. He feels it stay with him quietly as the sky begins to pale. The stars fade one by one, but before the last disappears, he swears. He hears it a whisper, too soft for words, a sound between thought and breath. "We will remember your light." He bows his head. The words settle over him like warmth. He does not answer. He doesn't need to. The silence is enough. The listening continues. As the first light of morning touches the water, the boat glides onward, carried not by hands or wind, but by the memory of every night that had ever heard him. Morning arrives quietly, but the sea remembers everything. It breathes in long, deliberate sighs, as if waking from a dream too vast to hold in words. The horizon gleams silver blue, and the world feels new yet ancient, like it has done this countless times before. The keeper rests his oars, letting the current choose the way. The water is calm, but underneath he feels a movement, a slow, deliberate pulse. It is not just the tide, it is memory. At first it begins with sound. The gentle slap of waves against the hull forms a rhythm he knows too well. He has heard it in other seasons, other lives. But this time, there are patterns beneath it. A low hum, a voice hidden in the body of the sea. The sound isn't words yet, he understands. It is the sea speaking in recollection, remembering what it has carried, what it has kept. The wind stirs, and from somewhere deep within the water, something rises, a hollow shell worn smooth by time. It drifts beside the boat, its surface pale and glimmering. He reaches out, picks it up, and as he does, the sound grows louder, a soft echo whispering inside the curve of the shell. He holds it to his ear. There, beneath the hush of waves, he hears the faintest sound, not of the sea but of bells, the lighthouse bells. The sound is distant, as though coming from another century, but it's real. The sea has kept it. He lowers the shell back into the water. It floats for a moment, then drifts away, carrying its echo back into the blue. He realizes this isn't the sea giving things back, it's the sea remembering them aloud. Every wave is a thought, every current a page turning, and he is listening to its story. As he drifts, more remnants appear. A fragment of driftwood, a torn rope, a glass bottle half filled with sand. Each object passes gently by, unforced like offerings from the deep. He doesn't touch them all, he simply watches. Each carries a memory not of loss, but of continuation. The ocean never forgets, it only transforms. He leans over the edge of the boat, watching the light ripple through the water. Shapes move beneath the surface. Not fish, not shadows, but impressions. like moments replaying themselves in the shifting light. He sees a younger man there himself, barefoot on the rocks of another shore. He sees the first flame he ever lit, the reflection of the lantern in his eyes. He sees the storm that once nearly took him. He sees it all as the sea breathes, each image blooming and fading in rhythm with the tide. It's overwhelming but beautiful, like standing in the middle of time itself. He whispers to the waves, "You remember me." The answer comes not in voice but in movement, a slow swell of water lifting the boat, then lowering it again like the ocean nodding. He feels a sting behind his eyes. Not grief, not joy. Something older. Recognition. He realizes he's not just seeing his memories. He's part of the sea's memory now. Every word he's ever spoken, every light he's ever tended, has become part of this vast remembering. The ocean keeps him the way it keeps the moonlight, reflected, reshaped, but never gone. The wind changes direction. He looks east where the sun climbs, and the sea seems to shimmer with more than light. It's as if the surface has turned to glass, and beneath it, the ocean is writing lines of light, weaving through the water patterns like veins or script. He cannot read them, but he understands. This is how the sea tells its stories, not in letters or sound, but in movement, in rhythm, in the patient persistence of waves. He lets the boat drift through it, the hull slicing softly through illuminated words. It feels like floating through memory itself. He remembers the night before, the voice of the dark that listened. Now the sea listens too and then answers. It's not a conversation, not in the way humans speak, but a mutual recognition. Light had taught him to watch. Night had taught him to listen. And now the sea teaches him to remember. All three together form something whole. He dips his hand into the water. It's warm, alive, with the shimmer of small phosphorescent sparks. They cling to his fingers, tiny stars that refuse to fade. He whispers, "Do you remember the light?" The water responds by glowing brighter, a soft radiance spreading outward from his hand, not blinding but alive, pulsing like breath. He laughs quietly. The sound ripples across the surface, caught and carried by the sea. For a moment, he feels as though the ocean is laughing too. The current slows. The shimmer fades. Only the steady blue remains. He sits in silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. The ocean has shared what it wished. It remembers everything but never holds it too tightly. He realizes this is the lesson: memory is not to keep but to release. Even the sea, ancient as it is, lets its stories drift outward, onward to become new again. He looks toward the horizon. The light there is soft, almost pearlescent. It feels like an open door. He lifts the oars again, not to escape, but to join the motion. The sea moves with him, quiet, sure, as if guiding him toward what it has yet to remember. He whispers once more, not to the sea, but to himself. "Then let us both keep moving." And the ocean answers not in sound, but in a single wave that rises gently beneath his boat, carrying him forward, carrying him home. It happens just before dawn. The world hesitates, balanced between shadow and breath. The keeper wakes to stillness so perfect, he wonders if the sea has vanished. He lifts his head, and for a moment he cannot tell where he is. The sky is everywhere, above, yes, but also below. The sea has become glass, not reflecting the heavens, but becoming them. Every star that once hung above now burns beneath the surface. The horizon no longer separates. It dissolves. The world folds inward, sky and sea. exchanging places like two halves of a heartbeat. He grips the edge of the boat, his pulse slow, reverent. There is no wind, no sound, but the faint crackle of light moving through the water. He peers down. Clouds drift beneath him. Stars flicker in the depths, not reflections, but themselves alive and patient, burning inside the sea. He breathes in sharply. The air tastes of salt and sky. He whispers without meaning to, "Am I above or below?" The water stirs faintly, and for a moment he swears the stars answer a low resonance, not sound, but feeling. He dips his fingers into the sea. It's warm, alive, with motion that doesn't belong to water. When he pulls his hand back, it glows faintly. Light clings to his skin, not reflections, tiny constellations. He stares at them, heart caught between awe and stillness. The universe, it seems, has decided to draw itself on him. He closes his hands slowly, afraid the stars might break. They don't. They sink into his skin, leaving a quiet warmth behind, as though the sea has marked him. He looks down again. The sky beneath him ripples stars, bending and stretching like breath. In the distance, a dark shape drifts across the luminous deep, not cloud, not shadow, but the faint outline of his own reflection. Except it isn't quite him. The reflection moves differently, delayed by a heartbeat. It rose when he hasn't moved. It breathes when he's still. And then slowly it looks up. For an instant, their eyes meet, one above, one below. He feels no fear, only wonder. The reflection smiles faintly. Its eyes glimmer like twin stars. Then, as the light shifts, it speaks not with voice, but through the rippling of the sea. There is no up, no down, only what is held between. The words echo inside him, though he knows they never touched the air. He looks around. The sky above mirrors the sea below each, reflecting the other in endless rhythm, a dialogue without beginning or end. He realizes then that this is not illusion, it is revelation. For years he had stood at the edge of things, between night and light shore, and sea silence and sound. But here in this impossible stillness he understands there was never an edge at all. Everything he thought divided was simply folded together, waiting to be seen from the right angle. He lowers the lantern into the water. The flame remains steady, its glow traveling downward, passing through the surface without resistance. It doesn't go out. It drifts, a small sun joining the stars below. He watches as it falls, slowly illuminating the depths. For a heartbeat, it looks as though two skies are sharing one light. He whispers, "You belong to both." The words sink into the water, and the sea shivers with color, gold bleeding into blue, blue into white, until everything glows softly as though lit from within. He feels tears form, but not from sadness, from the sheer vastness of it all, from realizing how small he is and how beautiful smallness can be. The sea murmurs faintly, waves, so quiet they could be breathing. He lets his hands rest on the edge of the boat, palms open as if receiving something invisible. Light moves up his arms, slow, deliberate, like veins remembering how to shine. He closes his eyes. The stars beneath pulse once, and he feels their rhythm echo through his bones. He doesn't know how long he stays there. Minutes, hours, perhaps time has folded too. When he opens his eyes again, the horizon is beginning to return, a faint line dividing what was one. The stars below dim slowly, as if sinking back into sleep. The water loses its glow. The real sky above brightens with morning. He exhales. The world separates once more. But he knows now it's only temporary. They will meet again, sky and sea, light and depth, above and beneath, because they were never truly apart. He retrieves the lantern, its glass warm against his palm. The flame flickers faintly, as if carrying a memory of where it has been. He sets it beside him, lets it rest. The sea is calm again. Only the faintest shimmer remains below, like the last trace of a dream refusing to fade. He whispers softly, "I saw the sky beneath." The wind answers gently, as if repeating the truth to the horizon. He looks upward one last time. The dawn spreads gold across the water, and the stars, though gone, seem closer, somehow, not distant fires, but quiet companions, swimming just out of sight. He smiles. For the first time, he feels no need to look up or down, only through. The sea and the sky, the above and beneath, are one unbroken breath, and he is somewhere within it, listening, still. The sea grew shallow long before he realized it. The oars no longer found depth. The sound beneath the boat changed less echo, more hush. He looked ahead. Mist rolled low and wide silver as morning breath. Beyond it he saw a faint curve of land, pale sand. No cliffs, no trees, just a line of stillness waiting beneath the soft blue air. He knew then he had reached a shore that was not on any map. The boat drifted until its belly kissed the sand. The touch was so light it felt like a sigh. He stepped out. The water barely reached his ankles, warm alive, trembling in small circles around his feet. The sand was fine, as salt, white and luminous, shifting with the gentlest wind. He turned once, expecting to see the sea behind him, but it was gone, or perhaps it had simply blended into the mist. He began to walk. Each step left a mark, then slowly faded as the tide breathed over it. The air was unlike any he'd known, not heavy, not light, but perfectly balanced, as though even the wind had agreed to rest. Somewhere far off he thought he heard gulls, but the sound was faint, like memory, not presence. He smiled. Perhaps the world was remembering him as he had remembered it. The shoreline stretched endlessly in both directions. He could have walked forever, and the scene would never change, sand sea light, woven into a single quiet fabric. But he wasn't searching anymore. He had no need to find. He was simply there. He stopped where the water met the land, the true edge, the place between. It was neither sea nor shore, neither motion nor stillness. It was both. He knelt, letting his hand rest in the shallows. The water moved through his fingers, cool and bright. He thought of the years, the nights of tending the light, the storms, the silences, the faces that had faded with time. He thought of how far he had come and how gently he had arrived. He whispered not to the sea this time, but to the air around him, "Is this the place?" The wind answered only by stilling. Even that was an answer. He looked up. The mist was lifting. Above him the sky was clear and wide, soft gold spreading like warmth through blue. No sun was visible, yet everything glowed. It was not light from a source. It was light being. He breathed in deeply. The air felt new. Each inhale seemed to give back what life had taken: patience, grace, quiet, understanding. For the first time he did not feel like a keeper of light. He simply was light, resting where it wished. He sat on the sand. The boat behind him waited, half in the tide, half in the air. He wondered if he would need it again, then realized it didn't matter. Everything in him that had once been in motion had already arrived. He looked down. The water reflected him faintly, and for a moment he thought he saw not his face, but a lantern's flame, gentle and steady. It flickered once, then stilled as though bowing to its own rest. He closed his eyes. The air hummed softly, not sound, but the feeling of a world exhaling. He could almost sense others here. Not people, not ghosts, but the presence of everything he had ever spoken to the sea, the light, the night that had once listened. They were here too, folded into the silence, waiting with him. He whispered to them, "All I have kept the light. Now the light keeps me." Time passed differently on this shore. The sun did not rise or set. It only breathed a slow pulse across the endless pale sky. He felt no hunger, no weight, only the rhythm of his own breath matching the tides. He understood now why it was called a shore between worlds. It wasn't a gate or a wall. It was a resting place where all journeys paused, where every sound turned gentle before becoming still. When he opened his eyes again, the mist had thinned to a shimmer. He could see far in the distance the faint outline of something, a light perhaps standing tall above the haze. He didn't move toward it. He didn't need to. It wasn't calling him. It was waiting just as he was. He smiled softly. The light didn't need a keeper anymore. It had learned to keep itself. He lay back on the sand. The tide reached his fingertips, warm, rhythmic, as though testing his pulse. He looked at the sky, bright but tender like memory, softened by time. He whispered one last thought, not to end, but to seal the quiet. The sea remembers, the sky forgives, and the light rests. Then he let his eyes close, not in sleep, but in stillness, the kind that breathes. The tide rose, once kissed the shore, and receded again, leaving everything exactly as it was. Morning came slowly. The first light reached him like a hand through fog, gentle, unhurried, certain. He opened his eyes to the pale warmth that touched the edge of the shore. The air held no sound, but the small breath of waves rolling in and folding back, as though the sea itself had learned to whisper softly now. The world was still, and yet within that stillness, everything lived. He sat up the sand, cool beneath his palms. The boat rested nearby, half in the tide, half in the quiet morning air. The lantern lay beside it, its glass fogged its flame asleep. He reached for it, and when he lifted the handle, the lantern stirred a soft flicker, blooming within. The flame was small, barely there, but alive. He smiled. It was the same light he had tended all his life, the same pulse of warmth that had guided ships pierced through fog and kept the long dark company. He held it close, watching the glow reflect on his hands. There were lines there now, deep and sure, etched by salt and wind and time. He whispered not as a keeper but as a friend saying goodbye. "You've stayed with me longer than I deserved." The flames swayed slightly as if answering. He rose, walking toward the edge of the water. The tide reached his feet, carrying the faint glimmer of morning. Out there the horizon was open, a soft, endless blue, rising into light. He raised the lantern just once more, toward the place where the sky and sea met. The flame brightened. A single ray slipped through the glass, spilling over the water like a thread of gold. It was not bright, but it was true. He stood there for a long while, watching the light drift. Each wave caught it for a heartbeat, then released it gently to the next. The light traveled outward farther and farther. Still, a soft chain of brightness linking the shore to the horizon. He could almost imagine ships out there still guided by it. He could almost hear their bells, distant but familiar. And for the first time in many years, he felt no need to tend, no fear of darkness, no sense of ending. The light would go on, and that was enough. He lowered the lantern. Its flame remained steady but smaller now, content. He placed it on the sand beside him. The glass caught the sun's reflection, and for a moment the two lights, flame and dawn, were one. He watched them blur together until he couldn't tell where one began and the other ended. It was a simple truth, and he let it fill him completely. He turned his gaze inland. The shore was quiet, soft ripples marking the breath of the tide. The air smelled faintly of pine, the kind that comes only from far-off coasts. He realized then that he was not far from home, not a home of place but of rhythm. Every wave that reached this beach had come from waters he once knew. Every breeze carried a memory of nights he had spent beneath the turning beam. Home, he thought, was never the tower or the island. It was the light itself, and wherever the light went, so did he. He sat down again cross-legged beside the lantern. The sand shifted under him cool and fine. He listened to the world, breathed the faint hum of the sea, the low murmur of wind, the pulse of the earth beneath. Each sound felt familiar, woven from every night and every dawn he had ever known. He whispered one last time, to the light, to the sea, to whatever might be listening. Still keep shining. The words weren't command or prayer. They were simply part of the air, as natural as the tide. He leaned back, slowly resting his shoulders against the sand. The lantern burned beside him, steady, patient, alive. Above, the first true sun of morning broke through, soft, golden, infinite. It touched the lantern's glass, then the water, then his face. The flame inside lifted once, flickered twice, then steadied again, as though greeting its reflection in the sky. He smiled. The light did not belong to him anymore. It never really had. He had only carried it for a while, kept it breathing until the dawn could take it. And now, as the tide crept higher and the world brightened around him, he felt the gentle weight of peace. Not final, not ending, just full. He closed his eyes. The last thing he saw was the glow through the lantern's glass fading softly into daylight. By the time the sun stood high, the shore was empty. Only the lantern remained, its flame gone, its glass warm with light. The sea lapped gently at the sand and carried a shimmer out to sea, a faint golden line stretching toward the horizon. The light continued. It always had. It always would. Morning came slowly. The first light reached him like a hand through fog, gentle, unhurried, certain. He opened his eyes to the pale warmth that touched the edge of the shore. The air held no sound, but the small breath of waves rolling in and folding back, as though the sea itself had learned to whisper softly now. The world was still, and yet, within that stillness, everything lived. He sat up the sand, cool beneath his palms. The boat rested nearby, half in the tide, half in the quiet morning air. The lantern lay beside it, its glass fogged, its flame asleep. He reached for it, and when he lifted the handle, the lantern stirred, a soft flicker blooming within. The flame was small, barely there, but alive. He smiled. It was the same light he had tended all his life, the same pulse of warmth that had guided ships pierced through fog and kept the long, dark company. He held it close, watching the glow reflect on his hands. There were lines there now, deep and sure, etched by salt and wind and time. He whispered, not as a keeper, but as a friend saying goodbye. You've stayed with me longer than I deserved. The flame swayed slightly as if answering. He rose, walking toward the edge of the water. The tide reached his feet, carrying the faint glimmer of morning. Out there, the horizon was open, a soft, endless blue rising into light. He raised the lantern just once more toward the place where the sky and sea met. The flame brightened. A single ray slipped through the glass, spilling over the water like a thread of gold. It was not bright, but it was true. He stood there for a long while watching the light drift. Each wave caught it for a heartbeat, then released it gently to the next. The light traveled outward farther and farther still, a soft chain of brightness linking the shore to the horizon. He could almost imagine ships out there still guided by it. He could almost hear their bells distant but familiar. And for the first time in many years he felt no need to tend no fear of darkness, no sense of ending. The light would go on, and that was enough. He lowered the lantern. Its flame remained steady but smaller now, content. He placed it on the sand beside him. The glass caught the sun's reflection, and for a moment the two lights, flame and dawn, were one. He watched them blur together until he couldn't tell where one began and the other ended. It was a simple truth, and he let it fill him completely. He turned his gaze inland. The shore was quiet, soft ripples marking the breath of the tide. The air smelled faintly of pine, the kind that comes only from far-off coasts. He realized then that he was not far from home. Not a home of place, but of rhythm. Every wave that reached this beach had come from waters he once knew. Every breeze carried a memory of nights he had spent beneath the turning beam. Home, he thought, was never the tower or the island. It was the light itself, and wherever the light went, so did he. He sat down again, cross-legged beside the lantern. The sand shifted under him, cool and fine. He listened to the world breathe the faint hum of the sea, the low murmur of wind, the pulse of the earth beneath. Each sound felt familiar, woven from every night and every dawn he had ever known. He whispered one last time to the light, to the sea, to whatever might be listening still, "Keep shining." The words weren't command or prayer. They were simply part of the air, as natural as the tide. He leaned back slowly, resting his shoulders against the sand. The lantern burned beside him, steady, patient, alive. Above, the first true sun of morning broke through soft, golden infinite. It touched the lantern's glass, then the water, then his face. The flame inside lifted once, flickered twice, then steadied again, as though greeting its reflection in the sky. He smiled. The light did not belong to him anymore. It never really had. He had only carried it for a while, kept it breathing until the dawn could take it. And now, as the tide crept higher and the world brightened around him, he felt the gentle weight of peace. Not final, not ending, just full. He closed his eyes. The last thing he saw was the glow through the lantern's glass, fading softly into daylight. By the time the sun stood high, the shore was empty. Only the lantern remained, its flame gone, its glass warm with light. The sea lapped gently at the sand and carried a shimmer out to sea, a faint golden line stretching toward the horizon. The light continued. It always had. It always would.